Hello, I'm U.S. Senate Chaplain Dr. Barry Black, and this is The Elephant in the Room.
Welcome to The Elephant in the Room. I'm your host, Cyrus Pearson.
I'm your co-host, Sophie Delkier.
And we switched things up a little today. We have, instead of a United States Senator, a United States Senate Chaplain, Dr. Barry Black. He was inspiring, Sophie. I don't know how you felt about it, but he definitely said some things that spoke to me and plenty to dig into.
Yeah, it was just so amazing hearing him speak. I almost didn't want to ask any questions and just let him keep speaking.
I know. I was just kind of looking at him and just listening to him speak. And he was so interesting. We were supposed to do this episode as a tie-in to Ash Wednesday, February 14th, which happens to be Valentine's this year.
And we totally forgot.
And this will come out the 16th. And honestly, I apologize. We got so wrapped up. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a bonus episode for Ash Wednesday and hence the guest. So it really would have all tied in well. But again, I think our listeners are going to really enjoy this episode because he was just amazing to listen to.
So here we go. Chaplain Black, thank you so much for joining us today on The Elephant in the Room.
I am absolutely delighted to be with you because I like elephants.
Do you really like elephants?
I do.
What do you like about them?
Yes. I love the fact that they supposedly have extraordinary memories. And I am a big memory guy. I play chess, and if you have a retentive memory, you can memorize enough moves to beat the average chess player. So
you have a great memory.
I do. I've been blessed with most retentive memory. When I was young, I used to read and remember what I read, and I remember some soliloquies that just reading them, I was able to entertain myself like you would have a cell phone with your earbuds and turn music on. Well, I would turn narrations on in my mind, things that I had read.
I'm actually really curious about that. So when you recall something in your memory, I know this is starting to get a little weird here, but do you picture where you saw it or where in the book it was, or how does
like
that
a photographic
memory, how does that memory come back to you?
Mine is more auditory for some reason than photographic, in that I hear the sound of the music of language. For instance, when I was in, I guess, the 7th grade, I used to hang out in the Ena Pratt Library, Division and Pennsylvania Avenue and North Avenue in Baltimore, Maryland. And I came across Poe. He had a poem called Alone, but as I read it, I was hearing the music. So it would be like Mozart. Dun, 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 dun. So as I recall, it said, "From childhood's hour, I have not been as others were." So this is me. I have not seen as others saw. I could not take my passion from a common spring. From the same source, I have not taken my sorrow. I could not, and I'm hearing music, awaken my heart to joy at the same tones. And all I've loved alone. And then he shifts. Yet in my childhood, in the dawning of a most stormy life, as drawn from every depth of good and ill, a mystery which binds me still. And then, like classical music, from the torrent of the fountain, or the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolls in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm and the clouds that took the form, when the rest of the sky was blue, and here's Poe, of a demon in my view. Well, I was too young to know what he was saying, but I remembered the words and the music of the words. So I hear, as as if I'm listening to classical music, and I remember.
That was so beautiful.
Away. For our listeners who are not watching this, I mean, that was right off the top of his head. He has nothing in front of him. You remember that from 7th grade?
I do.
That is,
Wow.
I feel like we've got a magician in here. This is amazing. So you said you play chess. Are there some secret chess players up here in the Senate, or
They're there will always be chess players, and there are almost in every office there are furtive chess players because they don't want you to know about it. It's an addiction.
Yeah.
And then, of course, DuPont Circle is kind of a chess mecca, so I find myself there.
you'll go out to
quite a
DuPont
bit.
Circle
I
and
do.
pick up a
I
game
do.
of chess?
I do.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, DuPont Circle, there are chessboards all around, and people really sit one-on-one, and they'll play chess. I used to live near DuPont. I saw that all the time.
And some of the strongest chess players you will find will end up at DuPont Circle. So you'll start playing and end up discovering that you're playing a grandmaster who would be the kind of individual who would compete for the world championship of chess.
Wow.
But he's out in DuPont Circle. In Manhattan, it's Washington Square, but this is DuPont
They ever
Circle.
try
So
to
it's
get any
wonderful.
money out of you?
Well, they have, and a lot of they haven't won any money for the most
Nice.
part, but they have attempted to get me to play. But I'm pretty theoretical, and I've been playing it for a very long time. And the retentive memory helps. So if you can remember games
Right.
from move 1 to move 45, that's a pretty strong advantage to have.
Unbelievable.
Do you have someone here in the Senate that you play often with, one of the senators?
I do. The information, of course, is classified, and I normally have to kill people. To tell who it is, but I do.
I love it.
Let's talk about something. You served in the U.S. Navy for over 27 years, and you've been here in the Senate for almost 21 years, so you definitely know how to hold down a job.
Yes, I do. When you grow up in poverty, you're like Avis. You try harder. So I grew up in a single-parent home, and I matriculated at Christian schools, and there is a kind of beauty about being exposed to sacred literature very early in life. And I started the first grade at 5, and my mother provided a monetary incentive for my siblings and me to memorize scripture. She gave us 5 cents for every verse we memorized, although eventually she put me on a flat rate, but initially it was 5 cents. And we literally know, I am not being hyperbolic, all of the short verses in the Bible, the low-hanging fruit. If a verse is 5 words or less, I probably know it, and it's in the memory verse, in the memory vault. And once we came across 1 Thessalonians 5, which is a treasure trove of short verses, and that was when she put me on the flat rate, because it's, pray without ceasing. That's one of the verses. Prove all things is another verse. Despise not prophesying as another verse. In everything give thanks. That's another verse. 1 Thessalonians 5:18. Pray without ceasing. 1 Thessalonians 5. So nickel. And she said, hold it.
Do you have a favorite?
Yes.
Do you have a favorite verse?
Probably Romans 8:38 and 39. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, angels nor principalities, powers nor things present nor things to come, heights nor depths nor anything in all creation can separate us from the love of God, which is also in Christ Jesus.
I love that one.
Okay, that's
I'm
beautiful.
curious about 2 things. First, what did you spend all those nickels on?
Unfortunately, Snickers bars, you could get the Sugar Daddy. I haven't been able to find, but this Sugar Daddy, you could get the Big Baby
that.
Ruth for a nickel.
Oh, yes. You could buy some candy back
that's
in the
right.
day
That's
for
right.
some.
Payday.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, unfortunately, a lot of sweets.
But secondarily, when you were reading the Bible, to tie this back into you hearing the music, what did you hear when you read the Bible?
Well, Hebrews 4:12 says, the Bible is alive and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing the dividing asunder of bone and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and the intents of the human heart. So there is something very, very special about reading the Bible. It is like a heat-seeking missile in terms of going to areas of concern for you. And so what you end up hearing is almost counsel for the challenges you are facing. Just the word you need. And sometimes it's counterintuitive. For instance, I was trying to decide on making a critical decision when I was in the Navy, but I felt I was unworthy to do what I wanted to do regarding that decision. And so I'm wrestling with it. And I pick up the book of Proverbs, and Proverbs chapter 28, verse 1. I have, for over 50 years, been reading a chapter out of Proverbs, actually praying a chapter out of Proverbs. I believe Proverbs is the greatest success manual ever written. So it was the 28th day of the month, and I picked it up. And Proverbs 28:1 says, the wicked flee when no one is pursuing. Now, that's a weird, you say, well, how can you get, that's a strange proverb. How can you, it was just what I needed to know you really should make this decision. You think phantoms are chasing you, and this feeling of unworthiness is a phantom, because God has something for your life that is not going to happen if you don't make the decision. And I made the decision, and I can say, fast forwarding, I would not have become an admiral had I not read Proverbs 28:1. The wicked flee when no one pursues. And if I had not had that problem, I would have never heard it that way. So that's how that supernatural operates.
Very interesting. So why did you join the Navy? You were very religious before joining the Navy?
Well, let's just say in my 11th grade Christian education class, I was voted the most likely to do time. So no. I was not known.
Really?
I was not known for my spirituality. Yes.
Oh, we have to hear about this then.
No, that's classified.
A lot of classified here.
I've forgotten the question.
Why go into the Navy?
Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to work with young people, and I had become a pastor.
Okay.
And I was pastoring 8 churches at the same time in South Carolina, North and South Carolina. And the average age for my members, the average was septuagenarian. They were in their 70s.
Right. Okay.
And I was passionate about working with young people. And the denomination that I was working with had a system where they would select a leader for young people for the denominational head. But I was in my mid-20s, and they said, you're too young to work with young people. I said, really? And, well, you have to at least be in your 40s to work with young people. So I started looking at options, and the military is low-hanging fruit. And it was, for me, 27 years of a protracted honeymoon. It was just what I needed.
Yeah. And then let's go into your time in the Senate here. I think a lot of people may not even know that there is a chaplain at the Senate.
Yeah, I didn't know until I came to the Senate.
Why does the Senate have a chaplain?
Well, in 1787, at the Constitutional Convention, when they reached an impasse in Philadelphia, good old Benny Franklin stood up and said, gentlemen, I am a very old man, but I have lived long enough to believe that if a sparrow cannot fall without God knowing it, that a republic cannot rise without his assistance. And I believe we should bring clergy in here to pray for us. Well, I think it was Hamilton who thought it was a bad idea, and after the kind of protracted deliberation you would expect, they eventually got pastors to begin to offer prayers. And when the legislative branch was started, in 1789, one of the first acts of the legislative branch was to get a chaplain, so that prayer has continued almost uninterrupted. Wow. Since 1789. In fact, the chaplaincy predates the Establishment Clause to the First Amendment.
Wow.
Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So that's how they got chaplains in the Senate.
How does one become the chaplain? I assume not everybody can just walk in and declare themselves as such.
In my case, the incumbent, Dr. Lloyd John Ogilvie, had decided to retire. Senators were permitted an opportunity to nominate a chaplain, minister, priest, rabbi, imam. I was nominated, and they had a round of 3 interviews. First round, just trying to get to know you. Second round, they winnowed the double-digit numbers down to, maybe not 8 or 9. We went through the second round where you talked about the strategic direction you would take the chaplain's department. Were you the selectee? And I was already the chief of chaplains for the Navy and had been the chaplain for the Marine Corps. So on my resume, my job description was he coordinates ministry for 550,000 people. So that got me to the final round.
I'm sure that helped.
Dr. Bill Frist, the majority leader at the time, interviewed the 2 finalists and saw something in me, I guess, sufficient that he selected me. And one of the nicest things that happened to me was when I passed the 20-year mark and became the longest consecutive serving chaplain of the United States Senate. Dr. Bill Frist was interviewed, so it's just 20 years later, and said, what do you think about this milestone moment for Chaplain Black? I had no idea what he would say, but he said he exceeded all expectations. So that'll make a journal entry day for you.
Aww, that's so nice.
You seem like an overachiever in everything you do. I mean, the list of awards you've received in the military, and I mean, it's almost too much to go through. It's you've been an overachiever your whole life, and you were voted to maybe end up behind bars. I mean, wow.
Yeah. Well, I remember the poem that says, "Lives of great men reached and kept, not that I'm a great man, but were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward in the night." I'm more like that swan crossing the lake. Serenity there, placid lake. There's a lot of kicking going on underneath that you don't see. So I have a lot of academic degrees and academic awards and that kind of thing, but I literally was in graduate school, I'm embarrassed to admit it, and this is normally classified, for 26 years. For 26 years, not a year went by, even while working full-time, when I was not taking at least one class at the graduate level. So,
wow.
It is not because I am so gifted that I have been able to accomplish what God has blessed me to. It's been His mercy and His grace, and He's given me some things that make academia easy for me. When you've got a halfway decent memory. Someone described, not I, but someone described the American academic system as, in fact, it was the late Archbishop Fulton Sheen, as information passing from the textbook of the teacher to the textbook of the student without going through the mind of either. So it's a memory drill, you know, and if you can take the notes and the outside reading and that kind of thing, and, you know, so fortunately at the PhD level it changed some. And it was a little
I'll
more.
probably never find out.
So
One of the secrets of success then is hard work.
that's it.
Man,
That's
just
it.
stick to it. Let's talk about the duties of the chaplain. What kind of things do you do up here?
Yeah. Well, I first of all facilitate for people who are not from my religious tradition. So I am a Christian, but I need to make sure that our Jewish staffers and senators have a rabbi who comes in for Torah studies, for Purim or Yom Kippur, the Jewish holy days. I make sure that an imam comes in for Ramadan. So you facilitate for others. We have a guest chaplains program. We've had a Hindu priest. We've had a Buddhist, a very significant Buddhist, the Dalai Lama, et cetera, et cetera. So you facilitate for your own. Then facilitate for others. Then you care for your own. So I do 4 Bible studies each week. One just for the senators that I just left, one for the chiefs of staff, and 2 plenary Bible studies. I do hospital visitation. I'm essentially a pastor for about 7,000 people who make up
That's quite a bit.
upper chamber. And I officiated weddings. I do premarital counseling. I do marriage enrichment training. You know, the list goes on.
Wow. Now,
Oh my
this
goodness.
is
that a staff resource? Is that included
can
in
you
our?
marry Sophie? Would that be- but seriously, can you marry Sophie?
No. I actually, it's actually a serious question. I know that a lot of the staff, they have free resources like therapy and counseling, and I don't know if our listeners know that already. But is premarital counseling
Of course.
a part of that for staff?
Course.
Oh my
Premarital
gosh.
counseling and actually officiating at weddings.
Well, would you like to come to Southern France next year?
Hey, I love the South of France.
Sophie, you're committing to this one if you offer this.
I mean, it would be amazing.
It would be.
Yeah, I would say coming to the South of France sounds fantastic on a podcast. So there you have it. You can, Your Honor, may I treat this witness as a hostile witness?
Wonderful.
You've described your position as a non-political, non-partisan, and non-sectarian. That might be counterintuitive to the way people think about it.
Well, I just did the keynote for the National Prayer Breakfast, where I talked about fasting and prayer. And I mentioned that fasting and prayer are pillars in the broad spectrum of religion. So Taoism, Jainism, Zoroastrianism, Hinduism, Judaism. So that's the kind of airplane view we have in terms of ministry. And I counsel people from a variety of non-Christian traditions on a regular basis. I'll counsel an agnostic if necessary. So yeah, it is. I sometimes I didn't mention we have a weekly prayer breakfast. I have to look at my card sometime to know what the party affiliation is. I'm not into that, and
Right.
never have been. They are, people I'm serving.
What do you get out of performing all these duties, or is that even a concern to you?
Let's just put it this way. There is an ineluctable law of sowing and reaping in the universe. Genesis 8:22 says, as long as time shall last, there will always be seed time and harvest. What I get is an opportunity to plant and water seeds. And I'm guaranteed that the Lord of the harvest is not only going to give me what I have planted and watered, but is going to give me, as in reaping and sowing. You always reap more than you sow. And there's an interesting story about 4 soils in Matthew 13. 75% of the seeds missed good soil, but the 25% that hit good soil brought forth exponentially. 30 times as much, 60 times as much, and even 100 times as much. I get those kinds of harvests annually, year after year after year.
Inspiring, Sophie. It's not just a regular conversation.
I know. It's really
good.
nice. It's clear that this is something that feeds your soul.
It is.
And it's really amazing to hear someone who is in such a religious stature, but who is, I would argue, more importantly, extremely spiritual.
Oh, thank you.
Would you say that you see yourself as more of a religious person or a spiritual person? I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear your perspective.
Well, there's a verse in John 4 that says, God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Jesus was talking to a Samaritan woman at the well. So I think that the spirituality trumps the religious, the orthodoxy, the truth part. But there's a bit of a hybrid there. But I think that, people talk left brain, right brain. Just because you have a left brain doesn't mean you're not using the right brain capabilities as well. But I'm a little like LeBron James, to mix a few metaphors here. And that is, LeBron has a go-to move, that step back jumper that he does. Everybody knows what it is, but no one can stop it. The spiritual has been the most beatific aspect of my experience because it is so palpable. It is something, I don't want to sound,
no,
but it is.
I love that.
It is so palpable that I can feel, and I have had recurring encounters for the 40 plus years that I've been doing military and legislative service, and that I wouldn't trade that for anything. My wife has had similar experiences as well, so it's the spiritual. In fact, there is a Bible verse, 1 Corinthians 6:19, that says, "Do you not know that the Holy Spirit lives in you? Your body is his temple, and you are not your own." Now, for the uninitiated, the Holy Spirit is considered the third person of the Godhead. So, the 1 Corinthians 6:19 is therefore saying that God lives inside of you, and you are not your own. If that doesn't make you spiritual.
I'm actually getting emotional. It's true. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
One of your duties is the opening prayer before the Synod gavels into session. How do you come up with that on a regular basis? Is that easy?
I pray the scriptures at least an hour a day. Okay. We call it Lectio Divina, where you open a Bible. I love the Psalms. And you start reading slowly. It's the opposite of Evelyn Woods. And when something stops you, you talk to God about it. It is vivifying, okay? Without an open Bible, I have about a minute and a half worth of good prayer material before I start repeating myself. With an open Bible, I can pray for hours because I am giving God the courtesy of starting the conversation. So if I'm reading first Psalm, happy is the person who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners. I hit the brakes. I said, wait a minute, God, whose counsel am I depending on? You know, where do I get my advice? What is my first option when I am trying to solve a problem? What am I exposing myself to? And I could have a 5-minute chat about just walk not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners. Okay, God, am I seeing gradations here? I was walking, now I'm standing. I was walking in the counsel of the ungodly, but now I am stationary in the presence of sinners. How comfortable am I? But then it continues, or sits in the seat of the scornful. Oh, so I do that an hour a day out of the overflow of that. And I've been doing it for so long, I actually don't need an open book to do it. I can, as I'm praying it from, I know quite a few Psalms by rote. So I write out of the overflow. So I could get a topic sentence from that, for instance, of happy are those who walk not in the counsel of the ungodly. So the prayer might begin, Eternal Lord God, who alone spreads out the heavens and rules the raging of the sea, we praise you for the joy we receive in seeking your counsel to guide us. Your counsel has been for us a lamp for our feet and a light for our path. Your counsel has been for us a sure guide in the midst of a confusing world. Today, as our lawmakers seek the direction in which, and it becomes a very, very easy thing, a simple paragraph or two, to just from a phrase come up with your topic sentences, and you're off to the races.
I kind of wanted to hear the rest of that.
Well, I think you mentioned this in your question, but I just want to clarify. You open the floor whenever there's votes with prayer.
Every session of the Senate is convened with an invocation, with a prayer.
And how long do they get? I mean, because you said you could go for hours. So how long do they give you, and do you have to limit yourself sometimes?
A prayer does not have to be eternal to become immortal, okay? So
True.
Military chaplains do an awful lot of praying, and that's where, when we pray in public settings, the band plays the Eternal Father, okay? The Eternal Father, the first stanza takes 45 seconds. So I want to be prepared for the gallop to the finish line around the 35-second mark and take her on in. I try not to go for more than a minute.
Okay.
You know, I mean, if the representatives in the lower chamber have these 1-minute speeches, I think 1 minute is enough to
Right.
give people a spiritual Red Bull experience.
Do you have a degree in philosophy?
I do. I have a master's of divinity degree, a master's in counseling, a master's in management, a doctorate in theology, and a PhD in psychology.
Wow.
Sophie, I told you it was too much to list, but
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's what took 26 years of graduate school.
Right. I always regret not taking theology in college. It wasn't a part of my normal course load, and I had already filled up all my, elective courses, but I was just dying to take a theology class.
Well, let me say this. I have moisturizing lotion that's older than you are, okay? So I can guarantee you, particularly the online stuff, the YouTube stuff,
Right.
anything you want to learn about theology, you can, if you YouTube it, you're good to go.
Right. So true.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're lucky.
So, right.
Let
This is a great time to be alive.
Right.
And then their audio books. It's just wonderful.
Right. For Senate staff, we have the chaplain.
Let me just get your thoughts on this real quick. It's going to be, we'll see where this goes. The importance of believing in God or a higher power. When you look at something like a Dostoevsky and you look at Crime and Punishment, and if you don't have that, you don't really have a moral code that you're paying attention to. If you're nihilistic or nihilistic, you don't really see a point to life. You don't really believe in religious and moral principles. You're just making those up yourself. When you do believe in God or a higher power, you're kind of given a moral code. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that you can find moral codes outside of organized religion. John Stuart Mill, for instance, said, strive to do the most good for the most people. It's utilitarianism, and he was very famous for that. Immanuel Kant, critique of pure reason, and he has something called a categorical imperative. And he wanted one maxim that would enable people to make ethical choices, whether they believed in the transcendent or not. And his primary maxim was, well, there were two actually. One is, don't treat people as things. They're more profound than just things. So you don't use people. They're not things. And the second has been extremely helpful to me. And when I'm talking to an agnostic or something like that, someone who just has no faith center, Kant says, live in such a way that your action can be made universal law. So what is he saying? He's saying, you ask yourself, if everyone in the world, if I were making a law, whether everyone in the world should do this or not do this, making it universal law, which path would I take with regard to that? That's an amazing and a powerful one. Then you have the Greco-Roman philosophers, Epictetus, his Enchiridion, this Greek manual. You have Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. You have Marcus Aurelius, a Roman general, who writes so eloquently about his experiences, and on again. A treasure trove of non-supernatural how to live the good life. Even Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethic. I mean, this is marvelous. He was writing it to his son Nicomachus. This is the way you live the good life, Find the golden mean. And money's not going to do it. Honor's not going to do it. Fame's not going, and on. These are some masterpieces that have helped me. And then there's Seneca, who has something called the Moral Epistles, 128 letters to a guy named Lucilius. Unbelievable, the wisdom that you find in Stoicism, which, by the way, the Apostle Paul Christianized. He knew philosophers, and these folk predated Paul. So when Paul says in Philippians 4, 11 through 13, I know how to abound, I know how to abase. I have learned in whatever state I'm in. I had to learn it to experience contentment. That Epictetus would say that, Musonius Rufus would say that. I mean, so many of the Greco-Roman philosophers would say that. So when I'm sharing with folk who don't believe in God, you've got a smorgasbord of things that you can choose for. But one of the best arguments I have heard is by William James, who wrote a little thin book called Pragmatism. And James postulates that in the arena of the metaphysical, when you're getting into the ethereal, validity is not what you're seeking for, because you can't prove it one way or another.
Okay.
You can't prove or disprove the existence of God. You can make the case, but it's a leap of faith, in both instances. So James says, in the area of the metaphysical, where you cannot prove things, it is the utility of the idea rather than the validity of the idea. And by utility, he's saying, as they would say in my neighborhood, how's it working for you? Okay. And I tell my atheist friends, if I'm dreaming, don't wake me. Because it's working for me.
Yeah. I'm happy. I'm good.
And I explain to them why it's working for me. And they want, can I take a hit of whatever you want?
Right.
So that's, there are so many people who know. Augustine described it. He said in his Confessions, amazing book, you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until we find you. And what he's saying is there is a God-shaped void, hole in each of us that only the transcendent can fill. And the reason why multimillionaire rock stars can sing, I can't get no satisfaction, is because all of the recreational drugs can't fill that hole. All of the recreational libidinal gymnastics can't fill that hole. It has to be filled by the transcendent. And when it is, and trust me, I'm not speaking from theory, when it is, that's when you saying, it's working for me. And that's when you say, don't wake me, because this is too good.
I love it.
A lot to explore, a lot to think about. Thank you so much for that.
I know that we might be running out of time soon, but I do. You've quoted some really amazing philosophers and pieces and authors. Have you kind of kept up with some more modern day philosophers and authors? Like, someone I really admire is Eckhart Tolle, and his work has really spoken to me in tough times. Do you keep in touch with those other authors?
I do, but the book of Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. One of my heroes, the late Archbishop Fulton Sheen, he got a doctorate at Louvain in Switzerland, and graduated at the top of the class. And as he was leaving, he said to his professor, I'm going back to America. What advice can you give me? And he tells this story in his autobiography, Treasures in Clay. And his professor said, you're a very bright young man. He was in his 20s. He said, read the literature where you are, read the magazines, know what the issues are. He said, and then go to AQUINUS. Go to Dionysius. Go to the Bible, and you will be able to gainsay whatever the argumentation and debate may require you to, but you will also be able to contribute exceptional wisdom as you serve your generation. Well, Aquinas' magnum opus is the Summa Theologica volumes and Summa Gentile. The Gentile was written to Gentiles, et cetera, et cetera. I have on my smartphone the Summa Theologica, which I go through at least once a year, and also the Summa The Summa Theologica will teach you how to think, because it has a very medieval way of presenting information. Most people wouldn't know what to do with it. But it first gives the best arguments of the opposition. You're not ready to debate until you know your opponent's arguments better than he. Aquinas gives better arguments for human sexuality than Freud. Okay. Aquinas' opposition arguments are so powerful that Voltaire went to a monastery just to study that aspect of the Summa. Then Aquinas will say, but I answer that, and he'll give amazing stuff where you got your hands up while you're reading it. Then he will rebut all of the opposition arguments. When you have that kind of triad going,
no need
on any issue, and so that was the advice given to Sheen at Louvain, and that's the advice that I took very seriously.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Let's as we're about to end here, I just want to bring up some other things that are on completely different topics. Our listeners won't be able to see this, but the chaplain is wearing a bow tie. You're known for wearing bow ties. How did that start?
When I started, Senator Ted Stevens was the president pro tem who gavelled me in each morning.
From Alaska?
Every Thursday, he wore a bow tie. I'd never worn a bow tie. And the reason I didn't like the bow tie, and the reason I didn't like it, and one of the primary reasons that I didn't like it was the only bow tie I knew was Barney Fife's clip-on,
right?
which, the aesthetics just did not appeal.
They're not easy to tie, Sophie. I don't know if you know that.
No,
well, you can go online, and it's like tying your shoes after you really learn how. Ted Stevens is the only one I ever saw who could tie a bow tie with one hand.
Wow.
That is special. But during World War II, before he went into the war as a pilot, he was an usher in a theater, and they had to wear bow ties, and he would literally in the chamber pull his bow tie off and just to strut his stuff.
That's hilarious.
And let you know what he could do. So I started wearing bow ties every Thursday because I knew that Ted Stevens was wearing bow ties. Went online to learn how to tie one. And the unsolicited kudos and that kind of thing. So it actually gave a distinctive look that I had not anticipated. And I learned at a memorial service very early when I was there, and it was one of the staffers who had passed, that particular staff called, my nickname for them was bow tie. So they would say, shh, calm down, bow tie is on now when I was doing the prayer. So I started wearing them, and I've continued to wear them. And
do you want to share how many you have, or is that classified?
I would be embarrassed. But I would be embarrassed because the number is ridiculous. But I get more bow ties as gifts from relatives and that kind of thing.
Right.
So I love
but
let's just say it's more than 100.
Wow.
And I am embarrassed to admit that.
No, I think it's wonderful.
I have not bought them, but there you have it.
That's right.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
We also were talking about classic movies. You're into classic movies.
I love
Yes.
Turner Classic.
What now? The movies nowadays, I've tried to get my children to watch, and they're very young, but the pacing is so quick now. You start watching some of these movies that aren't even quite that old, and they just won't sit through them. But what do you love about classic movies?
I love I love what the studio system did in terms of creating actors. Because if you look at, for instance, Bogart's early movies, he's a little clumsy, he's a little gruff, and he's playing thugs.
Okay.
But when he becomes Rick, if you've got Ingrid Bergman chasing you, you're going to become extremely popular. I mean, he morphs into this leading man that you would never expect. Then you've got built-in sequels, because if you like Cary Grant, you can go to the start and you can play your way through. I mean, Suspicion with Joan Fontaine, Deborah Carr in An Affair to Remember, which is, in my opinion, the best romantic movie ever made. I mean, just his work with Katharine Hepburn, Philadelphia Story. I mean, this is just amazing. And you see these folk growing. It's just wonderful.
Now, you've named a couple of movies. What do you think are some must-watch movies for some people that you may have lotion older than?
Well, if you haven't seen Amadeus, which won the Best Picture Oscar, Salieri is supposedly this mediocrity, and his language rivals Shakespeare. And in one point, Costanza is coming in because Mozart is crazy and doesn't have work, and she's trying to get Salieri to look at his music, and Salieri looks and he says it was miraculous. He says, I was staring through the cage at those meticulous ink strokes, at an absolute beauty. Displace one note, and there would be diminishment. Displace one phrase, and the structure would fall. I mean, the beauty of the language, the beauty of Mozart. I mean, it's magical. It exposes you to the genius of these composers in a way that you would never see them before. His Requiem Mask, oh my God. Confratatis Maledictus, oh my, I mean, it's just unbelievable. And you have that gift given to you so that you can play the soundtrack of the thing, Sir Neville Chamberlain, I think it is, the British. It's just, So it's a great blessing, and it takes a whole lot of work, and you get it for pennies on the dollar.
And Casablanca, you were a big
Casablanca would be one. Sound of Music, of course.
That's the one I was thinking of too. Yeah,
absolute amazing.
Good for your kids. Have your kids seen Sound of Music?
My Fair Lady.
Hearts.
My Fair Lady. Yeah.
Rex Harrison speaks, sings, and does a marvelous. Why can't a woman be more like a man? And on it goes. Yeah.
Might not be one of your favorites. I tried to get the kids to sit through The Music Man the other day, and they made it about halfway, but
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like it.
It's a lot of fun.
It builds up. It builds up.
Yeah.
You can't just put in the first 40 minutes. You have to go the whole way. All right, I thank you for spending so much time with us. We also want to point out you have a daily podcast.
I do. It is called Daily Manna. I begin it by saying, Black is back. And then, this is Daily Manna. It is intended to feed your faith and starve your doubts. And so that's how we come on. And, every day you can get your Daily Manna, 5 minutes of an inspirational message.
That's wonderful. Great. Where can we find that?
Well, call my office. My people can tell you, but it's out there somewhere.
Perfect.
My communications director handles it.
Wonderful.
Yeah, listeners, it's called Google. You probably could look it up there as well.
True. Sorry.
Well, Senator, I'm so used to saying Senator. This is even better. Chaplain Black.
Yeah.
Dr. Chaplain Barry Black. Is that how you say it? Chaplain Dr. Barry Black?
Yeah. Well, we just say Barry where I come from.
Thank you so much for being generous with your time and being the guest on today's The Elephant in the Room.
Well, it was my honor, and I was just excited when I heard that it's called The Elephant in the Room. I said, that sounds like fun, and it has been. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sophie, wonderful podcast, and I'm very proud we got out some classified information about the number of bow ties the chaplain owns. And I don't think he needs to be embarrassed about that.
No, I think it's a wonderful thing that he dresses like that. I mean, it's his brand.
In solidarity, I own over 100 neckties, so there you go.
Do you really?
Yes, I do.
Oh my God. I was going to say, actually, I think this is the first time I've seen this tie.
Well, I've been rotating about 15 in
Right.
the rotation. I've been leaving the rest out. But you know what? I'm inspired.
This is a good
Inspired
one.
after the chaplain.
Yes, you
Thank
should do bow tie.
Thank you. If you enjoyed, you can listen to us on YouTube, Rumble, all your podcast platforms. And time for some credits. The Elephant in the Room is brought to you under the direction of U.S. Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming. Our executive producer is Arjun Modi. Our show producer is Carly Rapp. Our technical director is Rashad Smith. And until next time, this has been The Elephant in the Room.